You're listening to I'm Sure They're Doing Their Best with Paul Baylor and Drew Ferguel.
Drew.
That's Paul. I hear Paul.
That's me.
We're reunited. You made it back.
I did make it back. Skype almost I did not want to answer that call. It was a little frightening there for a moment.
There was a substantial amount of ringing. I just thought maybe, you were indisposed.
No, I was hitting the green circle and nothing.
Okay, green circle's usually good, right? Black or red circle not good. Black button's
Usually.
also not good. Yeah, usually.
Yes. Usually, yeah.
Okay.
How are you?
Oh boy, I am deeply ambivalent.
Okay.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's just it's been a really busy couple weeks. I've missed you.
I've missed you too.
Yeah. I'm sure that all, our 18 or so loyal listeners may have noticed that there wasn't an episode released the previous week.
Yeah.
And
this time it was my fault.
No, well, I think
Yeah. So here's what happened. Okay, here's what happened. All right. So we were originally planning to record Saturday evening last week because I was flying back from Denver Saturday afternoon. And you had something come up, which is perfectly fine because we're doing it on a weekend. You said, "Hey, can we do it Sunday?" Well, Sunday was my daughter's soccer tournament. I was like, well, I'm not sure how long it's going to run. If she wins, she keeps playing. I'll let you know. And then, like most things in her soccer, I was running a little bit late. But by the time I got home, I was just kind of like in a state where I was tired from traveling and I was out of my routine. And I just freaking forgot. 100% just forgot until Monday. Because I have some reminders set up to make sure that I post the podcast Monday morning in case I get busy. And I see that reminder pop up and I'm like, oh, crap. Yeah, so this one's on me.
Well, yeah, but you were very accommodating because we made these plans before you left, and we said, hey, we're going to go ahead and do this recording when I get back, and that's all good and well. But I had to move it at the last minute, so even though you forgot per se, I think we're both kind of to blame here, just because we both had things come up, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's okay.
So how have you been?
I'm doing okay. Okay. Like I said, busy couple weeks. Before we get rolling, I got to tell you, man, I was really surprised that my dear friend Catherine from Norway sent in that awesome recording.
Yes, that was spectacular. Someone sent that in on our behalf. Hold on, let me look. I believe that it was Rob, friend of the show, Rob, who got that coordinated and sent that to me.
Now it all makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that was spectacular.
There's a dedicated group of my friends in the European area that all travel in the same circles, part of the SQL community, and they're all at very similar events. So that all makes sense now. But it was much appreciated. Catherine is a really good friend of mine. All the times that I have visited Norway, I've had a chance to see her and meet her a few times, and she's a wonderful person. And if you ever are looking for, Power BI or data stuff or Azure Data Factory stuff, I know she works with now, you should definitely seek her out. She really knows what she's doing. She's a fantastic lady. She really is. So I was really appreciative of that. So hopefully we get some more recordings in because those are just, they brings me such joy. It really does.
I have a few more in the pipeline. So
that's so good. Okay, so I have been waiting to hear how your little vacation went, and we talked about that on the last show, the various activities you had lined up.
Yep.
So do you want to just dive in and regale me with your travels?
Yeah. A couple of highlights. The tool show was amazing. They played a little over an hour and a half, I think, maybe an hour and 45 minutes. I have never seen a light show / laser show quite as intricate and impressive as the tool show. It also was, they had a very strict no camera policy. They had literally people walking around making sure you didn't have your cell phone out to use it, to take a camera, take a picture, or anything. And you know what? I'm a fan. we were general admission, so we had a seat, but everyone was standing, so we're on the floor, and which is what I'm used to, right? I'm used to metal shows where I'm on the floor and everyone's just packed back to back, and usually, I'm a pretty tall guy. But even, like, regardless of how tall you are, if someone has their phone above their head recording the video, like, your vision is mostly filled with that person's cell phone. And I will take a few pictures, but I'm usually there to enjoy the show. I don't, I'm never going to go back and watch those videos. I'm just not. I know that. I'd rather just enjoy the show. But having an entire arena where nobody had their cell phone out for a good, hour and 45 minutes was amazing. It really let everyone to kind of just... enjoy the show, really focus on things. I had to stand in one of the largest merch lines I've ever seen in my life. And by the time I got there, some of the sizes that I wanted were already sold out. So I had to get an extra, extra large, and I'm just an extra large kind of guy. But, got a really nice shirt. It was a really great concert. So that was really the highlight of the whole experience. We did spend a lot of time bar hopping from place to place. I have to say that we went to the True Brewing, the metal bar, and that was probably the most disappointing part of the whole trip.
Okay, well let's hear about why, because I was really looking forward to hearing the beers you may have had. Yeah.
So the beers were they were fine. They weren't spectacular. It was a small place. They opened up at 3:00 in the afternoon. We got there maybe at 3:30, 3:45. We wanted to get there a little early. And we literally stayed for maybe 20 minutes. The music, you could tell the music was metal, but it was at a volume where you could not hear it. The place was packed by, there was a lot of metal fans. There's a lot of battle jackets, but it was not staffed properly. So the wait times were really, really long, and the beers were just mediocre. So we decided, we would go somewhere else. So we did. It was kind of disappointing, but we made up with it. We had lots of good food, lots of good drinks. Mountains. Mountains are always very impressive. So it was fine. It was fine.
Okay, I want to hit pause for 1 second.
Okay.
You used a phrase in there. Not really sure what it meant.
Okay, battle jacket.
Yes. Tell me about battle jackets. What is a battle jacket?
So, if you think of a stereotypical heavy metal fan, you often think, obviously, black t-shirts, right? They always have a black t-shirt with some band logo on it. Maybe, long, greasy hair, jeans. And a lot of times, that person is also wearing a denim vest covered in patches.
So yes. It's like it's like a Boy Scout sash except for metal fans.
Exactly.
Okay.
So generally speaking, the rules of battle jackets are the hardcore rule is you have to buy the patches at the show. So it has to be a group of bands that you've seen. Kind of modernly, like, not every band sells patches at the merch at a concert, so you may have had to buy them online. But they're supposed to be bands that you have seen. Usually you have one large patch on the back. That's kind of called, like, the glory patch. And that's usually, like, your band, right? So you see a lot of, like, Slayer or, Anthrax. Like, this kind of the big bands. You have a big patch in the back. And then you cover the rest of it with smaller patches.
Now, I have to imagine, since I'm in imagination land here, I also have to imagine that these jackets, these battle jackets, if you will, are probably also covered in other substances. So you mentioned the fake blood at the Guar show. I'm sure that gets on the battle jacket, and you don't necessarily want to wash that off. Yeah,
cheap beer, lots of cheap beer on a battle jacket, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I do not have a battle jacket. I've been thinking about
the devil
buying a vest and starting one, but I've been kind of hesitant because my wife made fun of me so hard when I brought up the idea. So I've been hesitant to purchase
hold on. I'm going to come to your defense. I'm going to come to your defense here for a minute. So, Jennifer, if you're listening, you have to let Paul be Paul. this is who he is. And Paul, I fully embrace your battle jacket lifestyle. I want you to know that I accept you, and I want you to be happy. So I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to start a GoFundMe for your battle jacket, and I would like people to donate so we can get this off the ground. Now, before we go there though, so these patches are they sewn, or is it like a hot glue situation?
No, you have to sew. You sew them on. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I also don't know how to sew, but I imagine enough YouTube videos I could probably figure it out.
Well, I mean, really, it's just poking a hole in something over and over again, right? Like that's really all there is to it. Yes. How hard could it be? You know? Okay. Yeah, so no hot glue, so that's out. So you have to be in order to be a metal fan, you have to be a little bit handy, a little bit crafty.
Yeah, I mean, the diehard fans, I'm a pretty diehard fan. I don't have a battle jacket, but I do feel like I'm missing out a little bit. Yeah.
So what's the difference then? Because when you first said the word battle jacket, the first thing that came to my mind were like the early '80s like hardcore punk scene. You know, they had like the denim jackets with the torn sleeves and maybe some of those spikes through them. Am I far off the mark there?
No, you're absolutely right. If you kind of trace back the lineage of like early heavy metal music, it really came out of the punk scene. So that's why they both kind of share, wearing the battle jackets, spikes, the color black, band T-shirts, mosh pits. They all kind of came out of the same kind of the same general culture at the beginning. Yeah. You know
what's funny is I like late 70s, early 80s punk, like that dawn of punk, like that era of music I really enjoy. There was this documentary I was watching. I think it was on Amazon maybe. It was The Decline of Western Civilization. Have you seen that documentary?
I have not.
It's about some of those early punk bands. It's pretty good. I'll put a link in the show notes for you, but it was pretty good. And I think there's a sequel to it too. And it talks kind of about those early days of punk and like how basically these musicians get assaulted on stage during their shows. Like it's pretty crazy. Like these guys all get like stitches and stuff while they're performing. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, that's nuts. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you did the brewery thing. Wasn't that great?
Nope.
So you did the concert and the brewery thing. You said you ate a lot of good food. Were there other activities that were kind of spur of the moment while you were out there that were of note, or?
Some things. I think the highlight for that was we found this little place called 5280s. I'm gonna put a link in the show notes. It was this little hole-in-the-wall shop. If you've ever been to Big Fun in Columbus, if you're a Columbus native, it was very kind of the same thing. Basically just full of old 80s toys and memorabilia. It's kind of one part museum, one part shop. And for those people who don't know me, I am a big Voltron fan. So I went in there hoping maybe to find something I hadn't seen before, or something I haven't seen before that I could purchase and actually bring home with me. Unfortunately, I could not. I didn't find anything that I really wanted, but they had a pretty spectacular collection of 80s toys and just a metric. I remember this as a kid. Almost every popular television show, cartoon, toys also had a series of trading cards that you could buy, and sometimes they had stickers in them. They often also came with that hard, nasty stick of bubble gum, and they had just a huge collection of these cards for sale, including some Desert Storm war cards, MASH card,
I had
MASH
those.
cards, just so many. Some Star Trek stuff, Alf. It was pretty impressive how many they had. All for sale. That was a pretty neat place. And there was this other place down the street. I can't remember the name. It was another little store kind of in the antique district. And it was probably the most bizarre store I've ever seen in my life. It was pretty big, especially considering that it was in kind of a downtown area. And I'm sure the rent has to be just astronomical down there. Some of the features, some of the highlights, I remember them being sold. You could buy a preserved bat for $50. This is actually like a small taxidermied bat that you could purchase. And they had a display case full of doll heads. That was pretty unique. Yeah, so it was kind of, they had some like steampunk stuff, a bunch of masks. It was just I wish I remember what the name of the place was. Just full of bizarre stuff that you wouldn't imagine anybody would want to buy, but it was all there in one place. We went to an OSU Friday night. A couple of guys I traveled with were big OSU fans, and they wanted to see the OSU game, so we found a OSU bar, and that was a pretty unique experience. I didn't stay for the entire game, but that was pretty intense and pretty fun. Mostly we just, ate a lot of fattening food and drank too much. That was pretty much the highlight of the vacation.
Well, it is vacation. Well, good. And then you were back.
Yep.
You got back Saturday, and then you had the daughter's soccer game.
Soccer tournament.
Or soccer tournament.
Yep. They lost, so they were out of the tournament relatively early on. Now soccer is over. In fact, it's over. Soccer is over. And in fact, with my son, I just recently, right before the show started, we got back from my son's golf banquet, where they acknowledged the middle school and high school golf teams and handed out awards and fed us. And so as far as my family is concerned, sports are over until the spring. So.
Does that mean we're not going to get a recording of 631 Guy?
No, unless he's there next year. Well, we'll have to cross our fingers. But no, soccer is over.
I'm just wondering what could have been.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay, well that's a pretty full week, Paul. My week was not nearly as exciting. Yeah, it was just regular work for me, But I'm hoping I can get some time off around the holidays. That'll be pretty.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a few days to spend with family. So.
Yeah. Now you were back in the groove of work this week.
I was.
Yeah. You're right back in the swing of things.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And honestly, I'm one of those kind of people that after I'm off of work for a few days, I'm ready to get back into it. I like what I do for a living. So, and I just like routine. I like getting back at it. So. Mm-hmm. But it was a nice week. I actually got to relax, so I came back kind of re-energized and ready to go, and I still feel pretty good.
Good. I'm glad you had a good time. I miss talking to you.
Yeah, indeed.
All right. So before we get rolling on some other topics here, is there any other follow-up? I am looking at the list. I don't necessarily know if there was. The trip was the big one. I wanted to acknowledge, Catherine's submission. Was there anything else?
I mean, if you want to do, we talked about Catalina last week.
Yeah, so you have a new favorite feature.
I do have a new favorite feature. I don't know if you've noticed this or not. So I'm all in on the Mac lifestyle. I have iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, a MacBook. One of my favorite features that came out, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, was if you have an Apple Watch and a relatively recent MacBook, you can kind of use your watch to unlock the Mac. You basically just wake it up. It realizes that you're close. It gives you a little tap on your watch saying, hey, I'm unlocking your computer. Then you're unlocked. You don't have to use Touch ID. You don't have to use a passcode. My Mac also has Touch ID, which is a great feature. But they've I don't know if you've noticed this, and not every app is supporting it yet. But for example, if you go into system preferences, and you go into like security and privacy, usually all of those options, you have to click the lock to make changes. You have to type in your password or use Touch ID. Well, now if you have an Apple Watch, if you click on it, it'll basically tap your watch and say, hey, show you an icon of the application that's requesting. You basically use Touch ID, and you can double tap on the button on your watch, and it will basically act like you put your finger on the Touch ID, which is great for me when I'm in the office because I leave my MacBook on a stand and it's kind of far away from my hand, so I have to reach all the way over there to put my finger on Touch ID. And now I don't. My watch just taps me. I double tap the button, and I'm good. I don't know if you tried this yet or not, but it's pretty spectacular.
So now that I work at home most of the time, I don't quote unquote shower as much and get ready for work, if you will.
Got it.
And when I was going into the office, I used to shower and I would, get dressed and get prepared for the day and then involve putting my Apple Watch on. I gotta be honest, when I roll out of bed and make my coffee and kind of stumble over to my computer and begin work for the day, I kind of don't put on my watch as much as I used to. So, yeah, I haven't noticed that.
Yeah.
But, I have to wonder if that would really be a big as a game changer for me, because I sit kind of close to my desk and I also have a stand for my MacBook Pro. And I just kind of reach over with my arm because mine is within arm's reach.
Yeah.
So I can just hit the Touch ID. Now, there was a period of time where I only had my right hand as the hand that I used to unlock things. But my MacBook Pro is off to the left. So I have the left hand is kind of the quote-unquote dominant hand here for unlocking the Mac. I have 2 fingers on my left hand and 1 on my right, depending on where I'm standing. Yeah, so I haven't seen that yet. And it sounds like a really good feature if like your Mac was under your desk or if you had a big sprawling desk. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I'll have to try that out.
Yeah, it's not a feature that I had heard advertised. It was literally just a surprise the first time I was like getting prompted to use Touch ID, and I felt this tap on my wrist. I'm like, what is that? I mean, it's nice. It displays the icon of the app that you're using. 1Password isn't updated to use it yet, but I have some other applications that I use that are kind of password protected that use Touch ID, and those all work with it. So I'm pretty happy.
So you're a 1Password user. I'm a 1Password user, right?
Yes, I believe you are. Yeah,
I'm a 1Password user. For some reason, my brain like seized up there for a minute. I couldn't remember if it was LastPass or 1Pass. So I'm a 1Password user primarily just because the ecosystem on Apple is so great for 1Password, especially on the Mac. Let me ask you something. When you first boot up your computer every day, do you just put your computer to sleep, or do you actually shut it down?
I shut it down probably at least once a week and turn it back on fresh. So
I shut it down every night. That's just something I always do. And it seemed like there for a period of time, every time I would boot my computer back up, I would have to manually type in my master password to 1Password, which I think is what it's supposed to do. But now I'm noticing some days when I boot up, I don't have to. So I don't know if there's some sort of timeout there or...
Yeah, I think because first 1Password does launch every time you boot up the computer to kind of give you the helper and stuff.
Yep.
And I think there is, like, I'm not sure what the schedule is, but every once in a while, both on my phone and my Mac, it's like, nope, if you want to use it, you have to know the password again.
So on the phone, it's every time the phone reboots. I can
is that what it is?
I can successfully reproduce that. The Mac, though, for a while I just thought it was because, well, you haven't had it on for a while, dummy. You gotta type in your password. But there are some days I will boot the computer back up. And to my knowledge, it isn't because I was working super late, and it wasn't like a 12-hour timeout or something. It was just, I don't know. I haven't really figured that out yet.
I figured it out. So if you go into Preferences for 1Password and click on the Security tab, there is an option. And I certainly have not changed this, so I assume it was the default, where it says Require Master Password Every, and mine is set for 1 week. You can make it all the way from 1 hour to 2 weeks. You cannot turn it off, so you have to keep putting your master password in eventually. But, yeah, so that's my setting, is every week I have to put in the password.
I feel like mine's longer than that. I don't know. Well, speaking of Mac things, the other big thing that I did is, when we get to the topic here a little bit later, I don't have the world's biggest hard drive in my Mac. Whenever I bought my MacBook Pro, I prioritized putting RAM in it and over storage. So I invested in 32 gigs of RAM and I think a 512 gigabyte hard drive. Because the 1 terabyte, basically upgrading, it was either going to be upgrade to 1 terabyte on the storage or 32 gigs of RAM. I could not afford to do both when I was buying that MacBook Pro. So I prioritized 32 gigs of RAM, and I have not a ton of storage on it. So I've always had a external hard drive for things that I don't necessarily need as often. And for a while, it was like source code and some older documents that I wanted to back up. I had copies of my VMs on there that if I ever lost my hard drive, I had backups of my VMs. And I had like ISOs and stuff like that on there. If I ever needed to like build a Windows VM or something, I had all that on there. And for a while, I just had this Western Digital Passport. Then I had this really cool Samsung solid state drive that was pretty cool. But then I decided to just say, you know what, I really want to try to run my VMs on a external hard drive. So I went out and I bought a relatively fast SATA drive and a SATA USB enclosure to basically, you know, throw the SATA drive in there and then hook it up with a USB-C cable directly into my Mac. And the one I had was fine. You know, I don't run like super powerful VMs. You know, I just want some place to store the VM that isn't my computer because they do tend to take up a lot of space the more you use them.
Big.
They do. Yeah. So I just decided to do that, and it was fine. But then I ended up having to donate that hard drive to a family member whose computer was just on its last legs. So I took that as an opportunity to upgrade, and I decided to do the USB 3.1 or 3.2 or whatever USB enclosure for PCIe M2 hard drives.
Okay.
And wow, two things. One, it's really, really fast storage. And, you know, I formatted with APFS and encrypted it, and I've got all of my VMs running on that now. They're lightning fast. This is not a Thunderbolt connection, but it's USB 3.1. It's like 10 gig or whatever the standard is. And it's an aluminum housing on this thing, and it gets mighty. Nice. Yeah. It gets mighty warm.
Ooh.
Yeah. So if you are in need of a hand warmer in your office, I highly recommend this as well. And this isn't a Mac thing, by the way. Like, you can do this for PCs as well.
Yeah.
You know, if you are going to build an external hard drive for about the cost of what you would pay to buy one pre-assembled, you can do this yourself. You just go on Amazon, you find a little, and the key here is that it has to be PCIe M.2 drives and a PCIe M.2 enclosure. And they literally just look like long aluminum or metal, usually strips, and they come apart, usually with screws, sometimes not. Sometimes some of them are screwless, and you basically plug this thing in, you put the cover back together, you connect both ends of it, and format it like you would any external hard drive, and you will get tremendous speed. I can't recommend this enough. It's made my life a little bit easier from the VM perspective, and then I also used it when I upgraded to Catalina. So it's gotten a fair amount of usage now. I'm really enjoying it. So I'll put some links in the show notes to the parts that I used, but you have lots of options.
It has to be pretty portable too, right? Because it's not much probably bigger than like a pack of gum. Yeah,
it's very small. The only complaint the only complaint I would have is the particular model that I bought came with a USB-C to USB-C on both ends. So it's, you know, I don't need to use a dongle with it, which is nice. But it's not a very long cable, and when your computer's on a stand, it just kind of hangs there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm overcompensating right now. I've got a longer, like 2-meter Apple power cable, and it's just cords all the way down. Like, there's just cords all over my desk when I'm using it. So I need to find a more appropriate length of cord. But it's been really well. It's been really good to have. So if you're in the market for an external hard drive, I would do that.
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
A couple other things to talk about here. So while you were out gallivanting around the mountains, Paul, I was doing some interesting work.
Okay.
So, you know, lately I've been really getting involved in a lot of Azure-based things, which I like. And one of those technologies that I started to play with these days is Azure Data Factory. Are you familiar?
Where I work, I kind of do DevOps, and one of the things my team is responsible for is kind of managing our Azure subscription. And I was asked to make one of these for somebody. I looked at the documentation a little bit before the show because I wanted to at least have a rough idea what they are, but I've never used them. So why don't you tell us what an Azure Data Factory is, Drew?
So, Paul, are you familiar with SQL Server Integration Services?
Oh, howdy, I am.
Yeah, so this is the evolution of SSIS, as we call it in the business. So the idea is that in Azure Data Factory, you are constructing what are known as pipelines, which is really confusing to a DevOps person, but bear with me. So you build these data pipelines where you basically say, my data is here, I want my data to go here, and somewhere in the middle, I might need to do some transformation, I might need to call some RESTful APIs. You basically build these pipelines to get data from point A to point B. And those sources can be in the cloud, they can be on premises, they can be all over the place. You can spit data out to all manner of storage and services and databases and what have you, okay? But the core of this thing is data one place, data destination. Like, that's the idea. Now, Data Factory is pretty interesting because, one, it's, like I said, kind of the spiritual successor to SSIS. And, it lives in Azure. And it's really cool because it's got some really neat features that make development on it really interesting. And I got involved in this not so much from the data in, data out perspective. I got involved with it because I was helping a customer deal with some DevOps type practices around it. So I don't know if you've had a chance to come up with DevOps pipelines and releases for Azure Data Factory yet.
No.
Okay, so here's the deal. Think of a web app, okay? And as you're wont to do. And think about what you do today when you have a branch that maybe a developer or a group of developers are working on. You branch your code, everybody checks in their changes to that branch. That branch then gets a release pipeline set up to where that gets built. You build agents to do all the different things to it, and then you shove it off to a release pipeline and you deploy it to multiple environments, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So Azure Data Factory, from a DevOps perspective, is unique in that it works that way, but it doesn't. So when you build an Azure Data Factory, you can tie it to something like Git or Azure DevOps for source control management. You basically specify within a given repository what you want your quote-unquote collaboration branch to be, aka what is like your master branch, okay?
Okay.
So, you set that up, and then you will develop, inside of your Azure DevOps instance. And a lot of this is done online. It's a really slick interface. And, even if the repo is empty, you can create a feature branch. You can do all your work in it. You can check those changes back into that collaboration branch. And that collaboration branch will then eventually be what gets promoted up to, your next environment. So ideally, right, you have a non-production like developer Azure Data Factory where everybody kind of plays and gets things working and debugged and everything. And then, as developers finish their changes, they can create pull requests to get their feature branches back into that collaboration branch. And after they do that, there is a button in there, and it's a magic button. It says publish. And that publish button does a couple things. One, a pipeline cannot be used. It can't be scheduled or quote-unquote triggered in Azure Data Factory, whether it's on a schedule or some triggering event, until it's been published. So you hit this publish button, and it marks all this stuff as like done, and then you can start to set up, scheduling these things to run. But the other thing that publish button does is it takes your entire Azure Data Factory thing and it creates an ARM template from it. So every connection, every pipeline thing, every link service, every data set that you have defined, that gets all packaged up into an Azure ARM template. Now that Azure ARM template gets checked into a branch all by itself in your repository. And it'll say like ADF_publish. And every time you hit publish, it's basically recreating an Azure ARM template. So, and then in Azure DevOps, right, your build is basically taking that ADF publish branch. So if you wanted to do like continuous integration, you would basically set up a trigger on that ADF publish branch to basically say, oh, something got checked in here, because developers aren't going to be checking anything in that ADF branch. The only time stuff is going to get checked into that is if someone hits publish, right? So when someone hits publish, it checks in this ARM template and the parameters and everything to this ADF publish branch. And then you can set up a release pipeline to pick up that artifact, and you basically use Azure DevOps or whatever tool you want to then basically apply that ARM template to your other instances of Azure Data Factory. So everything that you put into there just like gets applied to your other instances. It's pretty gosh darn slick, if I do say so myself.
Huh.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is, like, you know, if you're a developer, maybe you have access like to developer databases or developer data sources, right? That maybe you don't want these people to have access to production. So
Right,
you can,
right.
so your options there are is you can do those transforms when you do the release pipeline, right? Like you can basically inject different values into these parameters for like your service principals and your secrets and all that stuff, your connection strings, all that stuff could be parameterized in Azure DevOps. Or one thing that Microsoft's really pushing is using Azure Key Vault to store all that stuff, and then each environment just hits a different series of secrets in Key Vault. So like I said, I was helping a customer with that, and you know, I'm glad I can grok the basics of DevOps to make all that work. And it's like I said, it's really interesting because it's not like anything I've done before. Because, you know, typically everybody just kind of you pick a branch, you create builds and pipelines off of that branch, and you kind of just stagger those forward. Like, you know, if you're working on a two-week iteration schedule, right? When I branch, I'm also creating builds that point to that branch. I'm also creating releases that point to that branch. This doesn't really work that way. And the other thing that's interesting about it is that when you take that ARM template and you deploy it, you basically have two options. You can do incremental deployment. So basically, the ARM template you're deploying, it'll find all the things that don't currently exist in the data factory you're deploying to, and it will update and it will add, but it won't delete anything. So you can build up a little bit of cruft with this incremental deployment, but the other alternative is replace, or I think it's complete they call it. And what that'll do is that'll blow away an existing data factory and then basically deploy a new one on top of it, which can also be problematic if you have things that are running while you're trying to do that. So you have to be careful with your deployment model, and you might have to write some PowerShell scripting to basically disable any active triggers in the data factory you're deploying to, and then restarting them once you're done. But it's pretty interesting. So I spent the better part of last week working on that, and obviously the customer was pretty pleased with it, and I got to learn quite a bit. So as you continue your journey with Data Factory, I would love to hear kind of what you guys are up to, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah, I'm just, as you mentioned that, I was like, well, you know what? I remember hooking it up to a Git repository in Azure DevOps. So I went out there and I started poking around, and as someone who has done some Microsoft SQL SSIS stuff, and remember just how awful those, I think everything is stored in big giant XML stuff with sometimes binary blobs, and it was just gross. And then looking around and seeing these, pipelines being expressed by very, very easily readable, JSON files. Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. Like it's come a long way.
Yeah, it's JSON all the way down for sure.
Yeah.
And most of the development, I think people use the web interface to do it, to basically generate all this stuff. But if you want to code JSON, go for it.
Yeah, but it's like you wouldn't, you'd use a tool or something, but the JSON is extremely readable.
Yep.
And
who needs namespaces?
No, exactly.
Yeah. That
is pretty cool. Yeah.
That was my adventure last week. And like I said, there's obviously a lot you can do with Data Factory, and I'm sure that if I spent a lot of time with it, I could find all the cool stuff that I learned how to do with SSIS, with like dynamic parameters and stuff like that. That's all there too. Yeah. I haven't gotten that deep. Mine were just really simple, like, hey, pick up this file on a blob storage and write it to a database. Like that.
Right, right.
But that's what like 98% of the world runs on, so I feel pretty I feel pretty comfortable in my skills. So yeah, so that was my big adventure. Sorry for all the data talk and DevOps talk. If you're here for the heavy metal or other shenanigans, sorry.
We're both technical guys, so every once in a while we got to nerd out a little bit.
Yeah, by episode 20, you should know what you're into.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it should not be a surprise to anybody. Yeah,
cool.
Okay.
I'm excited to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. I'm glad to hear you guys are using that.
Yeah.
Okay. Last topic on the list this week was something else that I worked on over the last couple weeks. And, I know it's something that if you work in IT, you've encountered this before. And before we get into this topic, I want to just come out and say it. I'm not complaining. Not calling anybody out. I'm not trying to be mean here. I think this is just a fact of life for IT people in that you become tech support for family.
Oh, howdy. Yep.
Yeah. I remember when I was little, we had Apple, 2Cs and 2GSs in the house. And, I didn't really know any better. I was a pretty young kid. I was one of the first kids in my class to submit a report that was typed on a computer at home and printed out. My parents were really patient with me, and they helped me learn how to use AppleWorks, and they taught me how to open the computer and play games and do stuff. And my grandfather on my dad's side taught me a lot about computers. From his old TRS-80 in the family room to his 386s and 8088s and things. So there was a point in time where young Drew was taught to, and people showed patience with teaching a young person how to use a computer. However, as I've gotten older, and I know I'm not alone here, right? But becoming the person in the family when something breaks to constantly fix something, I think that nobody truly enjoys it.
No,
it's from broken routers to I forgot my Wi-Fi password to I forgot my Apple password or my computer's slow to I keep getting pop-ups saying Microsoft is going to call me on the phone and help me troubleshoot my computer. I just think it's a fact of life that you become that person for.
Yeah, it's like it's stereotypical, but it's based on truth. Is you have that conversation with somebody. It's like, hey, what do you do? And you're like, well, I'm an IT or I'm a developer. I'm yada yada yada. And then you get like, oh, I'm having this problem with Word, or can you help me with my home Wi-Fi? And it's like, what I do isn't that particularly, but you're polite and you smile and you try to help them out. Yeah.
Because you want to be helpful. I've come to a realization here, and it's helped me deal with my malaise on this particular topic is, look, for better or worse, my creator put me on this planet with a certain set of skills. Okay. And if that means that I can fix Wi-Fi networks and I can reinstall Windows and I can clean the malware off computers and I can figure out why your phone isn't, connecting to your Wi-Fi or whatever, right? These are the skills that I have. And other people may not have those skills. I really truly don't feel in all my time of doing family and friends IT support that anybody has ever asked me to do something out of laziness. Because I feel it always has been genuine. They just don't know what to do. They're frustrated. They just need help.
I think a lot of it is just like when you're IT, right? Like, computers are finicky and persnickety and full of weird arcane error messages, and the more you use them, especially when you use them for your work, you just get used to seeing that kind of stuff, and you build up just kind of a confidence. It's like, yep, I'm seeing this error, but I'm sure if I put in the right set of the right Google search, I'm going to find an article that's going to help me through the thing, and more importantly, I'm going to understand what I'm reading, because you have that confidence. About dealing with stuff. And I think a lot of people just kind of miss that. Though I do have some times where, like, I'm trying to do this with my kids, because a lot of times my kids will just basically, like, my son will say, hey, Dad, can you come up? And there'll be some kind of weird dialogue box where, Steam is saying something or some pop-up that he doesn't understand. And, or my daughter's like, I don't understand what my phone is asking me to do. And my first instinct for them, because I'm trying to get them to be self-sufficient, because at some point they're going to be out of the house and they're going to have to do that stuff themselves. I was kind of like, say, so if I wasn't home right now and you wanted to get past this, what would you think you should do? Like, read what it's saying, use your power of comprehension and think about it. And what would you click on? And you know what? Usually they read it and they go, I would click on yes or cancel or, no. And they usually get the answer right. So I'm trying to teach them some efficiency, but I've had to help the in-laws with, they hand me a laptop and say, like, my hard drive's full, I don't know what to do. And you be polite and you just kind of help them through it. Yeah.
Yeah. And because like my thing was, someone in my family would come to me and be like, hey, can you help me? Like, my monitor won't turn on. And like, I'm like 97% sure it's just not plugged in. Right. And
right.
like, I spent all day troubleshooting a really deep, performance tuning problem in SQL or a PowerShell problem. Like, I exhausted so much computing energy during the day that, like, I know that if I drive over to their house, I'm going to find an unplugged monitor. I just know it.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to find a broken monitor. Or I'm going to find a broken monitor, and I don't know what they're going to expect me to do. Like, I don't have spare IPS panels in my car. Like, I can't just rip that out and, like, fix that. I don't have my soldering iron on me at all times. Like, I can't, like, revive your monitor. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, like, the thing of it is, I have to look at it from their perspective. A lot of the people that I have helped with this stuff, they don't have these skills, right? This isn't what they grew up on. This is what they do every day. They see that in me, even though, like, I haven't done help desk work. And I'm not saying to denigrate help desk stuff here. It's just that I haven't done that kind of work in a lot of years. But you never truly forget a good troubleshooting, like, methodology. Like,
right.
A lot of this stuff, even as technology marches on, it's usually the same thing, right? And, if you flip the tables, right, I have people in my family who are really good at stuff that I would never want to deal with, like plumbing or air conditioning or woodworking or electrical stuff, right? Like, when that stuff doesn't work for me, oh boy, howdy, I just throw a fit. Like, I can't deal, right? Like, I turn into a ball of stress. And, like, in some ways, it's the same situation, just reversed, right? So I don't really get as upset as I do about it. You just have to do it. You just have to help where you can. And, I think the hardest part for me has been like, hey, listen, the reason your monitor won't turn on is because, it's dead. Like, you're going to have to go buy a new one.
Spend some money. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's been the hardest thing because, I don't have, like, a warehouse full of monitors. Like I said, like, I can't.
Turns out,
I can't just, like, hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Let me get you a new monitor. I mean, I do have some spare parts in my house. Don't get me wrong. I'm a little bit of a hoarder when it comes to that stuff. And if I have it, I'll gladly share it. But I don't always have the right answer there, and that's always tough too because then you feel like you're letting them down. Yeah, it's just hard. Yeah. It's just hard. And with holiday season coming up, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more of that.
Yeah, it always seems to be around the holidays. There's always somebody who has a question or they have, they have a problem or they asking you for advice or I mean, the question I get every once in a while that I hate is like, I need a new computer. What should I get? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah.
You don't know how hard of a question that is.
Well, see, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you touched on something here, right? Like, is that really IT support? Like, you had this computer and you had it for 8 years and it was pretty good. You seem to hold on to it and you liked it and it worked for 8 years. Like, you can throw a dart and hit a pretty good computer at a major big box retailer if you're of the type.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are
yeah.
And when it comes to buying a computer off the shelf, believe me, there's a reason ones are cheaper than the others. Like, that's the best. That's the only advice I give to people is, yes, you could spend $200 on a laptop if you want, but I promise you, you're going to want to wonder why that other one is $800. And it's probably for a pretty good reason, right?
Right.
You absolutely get what you pay for is what I tell everybody. Yeah, but this one's $650 and this one's $800. Okay, why do you think that is? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, here's why. And then, like, I can get into the reasons why. But, like, if they – and then, like, the thing that'll get me is, they'll go buy this cheap laptop. 3 months later, I'll get the call. Man, this thing's running like dog. Swear again. This thing's. I haven't. I was on such a.
It's going in the notes.
Oh man, I was such a good tear there for a while. You get the call. This thing's running like crap. What do I do? And I'll just say, well, you see, it's doesn't have all the RAM in the world. You skimped out on this. what do you want me to tell you? You know, I can't really, and you know, because it's so cheap, the hardware's not replaceable, right? Like I can't go in there and upgrade much of it.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a tough situation. So you want to give good buying advice, but you know, people have budgets too. So you just I think that might be the worst question you could ask somebody is, well, what should I get?
Yeah. You know, and these days, more and more, for a lot of people, like, I know all they do is they browse Facebook and they respond to emails and, you know, they shop on Amazon. They don't need much out of their computer. And the more and more, I recommend Chromebooks.
Yeah, you know, it's funny enough you mentioned that. I know that Google just announced this new round of Chromebooks that are coming out, and I still have a little bit of a pipe dream that I want to buy a Chromebook and just put Ubuntu on it.
Yeah.
Which you can do if you get one that has like a you know, an Intel processor in it. I don't think you can do it with the ARM processors yet. Maybe you can. But if you fork over a little extra cash and get a decent Chromebook, I mean, the battery life's amazing. They have pretty good displays, pretty decent keyboards, like you said, all the functionality you need, right? Especially if you live in the cloud and you do, you know, Google Docs or Office 365.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a bad option.
Yeah, like most of the stuff, like your storage is really backed by Google Drive. Like everything you do is just by default in the cloud. And like you could literally chuck one of those things in the lake. go to the store, buy a new one, type in your password, and then like boom, everything is in there. You don't have to worry about backups. You don't have to worry about, and usually they're inexpensive. Like you can get like, you know, like we have some cheap, like a couple cheap Chromebooks. A lot of them provided by various schools, and they're not as nice as some of the other ones, right? That, you know, the display panels aren't quite as sharp and the processor's slow, and sometimes you're doing stuff and it kind of just drags. And you can get some, you know, but if you spend a few $100, you can get a relatively nice Chromebook, and like you just don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
And if it breaks, you're like, well, I only spent like $300 on this. It lasted me 2 years. That's great. And like I said, you just put your Google account in there, you sign in, and you have access to everything. Like you don't lose anything. They're just, yeah. For people that don't use their laptops very hard, or honestly, let's be honest, very typical usage patterns for laptops, right? Occasionally they're doing some, you know, spreadsheets and Facebook and email. Like they're great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they truly are. You know, the other thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way is like, I really feel that it's a form of assault that computer manufacturers still put spinning hard drives on laptops.
Oh, it should be against the law.
It should be. Like that is a form of assault. Yeah.
Yep.
It amazes me that people still sell computers with spinning hard drives. I mean, how much money are you really saving by not doing that these days? I mean, unless they've got a glut of them, you know, trying to burn through parts. I mean, I get that, but you know, the fact that
they are so much cheaper, but there is a point where you're like, yeah, spend the extra $100, $200, get the SSD. Because it's going to save you that, like, over the lifetime of that laptop, you're going to save that much money in time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is such a productivity booster. You know, and again, it's just, you know, most laptop shoppers don't know any better. Like, they see it, and it's on sale, and, you know, something that, you know, the sticker will say $850, discounted down to, you know, $599, and, like, it gets a good deal, but... You know, they're getting a spinning Rust hard disk that spins at 5,400 RPM, and some like slightly better than Celeron processor with like 8 gigs of RAM, and you know maybe the display looks nice and it's got a nice keyboard, but it's just garbage otherwise. And it comes with all that bloatware. Ugh, forget about it.
I was going to ask, like, I haven't been in the Windows ecosystem in quite some time, but I remember back in the day, if you ever bought a computer from the store. Like, just the amount of software that was on there that just was just pestering you to spend money and buy the subscription, and, you know, hey, your McAfee antivirus only lasts for 30 days. And
so it's not that bad anymore from what I've seen. Really, really the bloatware on most OS installations now are like the manufacturer's drivers and utilities.
Yeah, okay.
So like Dell is still pretty bad at this. Like Dell will throw on a bunch of things for like their light up keyboard and their Wi-Fi drivers and like
got it.
Stuff that, if you did a fresh install of Windows would just, pick up the drivers because there's some generic part, right? Like you don't necessarily need all that. HP is probably in the same boat. Asus isn't too bad, but then you get all that gamer trademark stuff on it, and it's like, not about that life. And Dell,
Republic of Gamers or whatever,
right? Yeah. Like Alienware is in the same boat there. Like you get a bunch. You still get some annoying little things that probably hurt more than help, but it's not it's definitely not like a late '90s, early 2000s like McAfee for everybody type situation.
Yeah.
By the way, I watched a YouTube video about him. I knew he was crazy, but
he's a weird dude.
He's a weird guy. He's a weird guy. He's got like his own private army now. Like I don't really know what's going on there. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. And he did that whole thing where it's like, I'm going to make an unhackable wallet, and then it got hacked like the next day.
Yeah, I did catch that, yeah.
Oh, John. Yeah. Man, computers are... I don't know. Are computers a mistake? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder.
Yeah, sometimes. And, and we're both relatively, we're both men of a certain age. We grew up... I mean, like your first computers didn't have the internet. Like, they just didn't. Like, the internet wasn't a thing. So I think, people in kind of our generation, when you used a computer, you had to learn how to use it. Like, it wasn't intuitive. You had, especially I remember back, my first couple of computers were like a VIC-20 and a Commodore 64. And to even like load a game off of a disk, you had to learn a handful of obscure, not intuitive commands to get it to work.
Absolutely.
And I think like that kind of just sets you up for knowing that like, computers aren't magical. They do what they're told. And yeah, they're a lot easier to use. Like people just like the magic is gone. Like there's not that level. I mean, it's probably the same way with older cars where a lot of the stuff was you could repair it yourself. When you bought a car, you really were signing up for some level of maintenance and understanding of how it works. And I get behind a car today with an automatic transmission. And the only thing I care about is how to work the radio. Like, I don't care how it works. I know it's full of computers now and stuff, but I don't know a dang thing about internal combustion engines. So I kind of feel that's the same way with computers these days. Like, people growing up, they just expect them to work. And when they don't have any, they don't have the skills to troubleshoot that themselves.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head, right? Like learning basic DOS commands. Like, it was funny, like, in my grandfather's house, because, he was the only person I knew that had a PC. Like we were mostly Apple stuff at home. And like there was a level of that on old Apple IICs and 2GSs, right? Like where you basically booted up and you had to type commands to load things off the disks or whatever. Like, we had an SC20 hard drive at one point, but before then it was insert 5 1/4 inch floppy, run command, run program. Yep. Like that was absolutely, that's the way it worked, But what's funny is like, if you've ever seen a box for MS-DOS 3, right? Like it came with a manual that literally explained every command in DOS, right? Like, this is what this command does. Like command.com, this is what this is for, right? Autoexec.bat, this is what this is for, right? Here's how you edit. Like it's pretty crazy. And like today, you unpack a computer and you turn it on, and the computer walks you through most of it. There's probably a majority of users that don't even know that there's a command prompt there still, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. But again, it's just, it's different use cases. I don't know. But again, it's just different skills that we have that other people don't. That's what I just have to keep telling myself.
Yeah. And like for your first point, like, yeah, it's not fun. And like, obviously if family has a problem, I'm more inclined to help. And my wife knows not to volunteer my services for just anybody. Like she has a handful of friends that are really close friends. And she knows that if they have a problem, she's more than willing to offer my services. But yeah, I'm trying to be the same way too. Is just be more patient, understand that like they're coming to me. It's like the same thing. Like if I needed to, hang some drywall in my basement, I have people in my family who are really good at that kind of stuff, and I'm probably going to call them for help or at least advice. And it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So long story short, I will continue to be the family tech support, for the foreseeable future. I do have people in my family. Like, I will say this, like, occasionally I will get asked like some interesting like programming questions or like development questions from members of the family. Like I have a cousin who's doing some data science studies and was asking me some Python questions, and I was helping out with that. And I had one of my wife's nephews is pretty into computers, and he's pretty savvy. He hasn't come to me for anything yet, but I know that the day is coming where he'll probably have questions that I can help with. So I'm anticipating that, and those kind of questions I will always like.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah.
Wow. Man, feels good to do this again.
Yeah, this was good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap for episode 20.
Episode 20. Yep.
Man, still going strong. All right,
Absolutely.
Paul, where can people find us on the internet?
You can find the podcast at doingtheirbest.com and on the Twitters at doingbestpod. Yes, I said that with confidence. If you want to reach out to me, you can also send an email to contact@doingtheirbest.com. So if you have an intro or some topics, actually we have some more topic suggestions I have in the inbox I need to put into the document. I've been a little lazy. Yeah, I know. So I'm excited to get to some of those. If you have any ideas, suggestions, feedback, comments, send them my way. And you can reach me personally on Twitter at Paul Baylor. That's Bahler. And where can we find you, Drew?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Pitferg, Pittfurg. That's probably going to be the best place to see me these days. I haven't been as active on Twitter as much since I've been so busy. But, I'm really starting to find my groove with stuff, and I'll probably be spending more time on there these days. I did post a neat picture of some new Kingdom Death dice that I got today.
Yeah, so, I saw those. Those are hot.
We really need to play that game, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
I'm tired of looking at the box and the cool artwork and everything and just being like, there's a game in there somewhere.
Yeah,
but no, I get these newsletters. I get these newsletters and they're like, here's these fall death dice, and I'm like, buy now. Like, here's my money. They're so cool. They're nice. They look good.
Yeah, then again, I can look around my office and look at my collection. There's probably a good 8 games that I've bought that I've never played. So,
Yeah, we'll have to do another game night soon. I definitely want to get going with that. Well, that about wraps it up for this week, Paul. I will talk to you again soon.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.